it's getting hot out here.
Oh,
That's all I said. Like what years I think.
Trying to make this money for the
he's
ring.
really feeling now, man. He's
Yeah,
moving
like,
that
he
trick.
doesn't understand the sequence that's happening. He's like, oh, like he's just exploding.
Yeah.
Can't understand it.
It's terrible. His eyes are always bloodshot.
There's some
too.
good stuff for the front of the podcast for you there, cuz.
Oh,
He's hanging out, yep.
Oh, shucky duck.
Hard out there for a pair of bandits is no different.
I'm gonna be Booker T for Halloween next year.
All right, you got me. You got me. You got me, Greg. You fulfilled the laughter quota for the evening. All right. Final count. 3, 2. What's up, guys? Our Wrestling Podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious, along with Just the Total Package, Craig the British Bulldog, and Uncle Cuz, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Today's topic, Ahead of Their Time, Part 2. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? I got through it. I got through it with
for it.
in spite of your dipshit stuff. I got through it, so you're welcome. Jess, we did this one other time. Who did we talk about that was ahead of their time?
did not. We are going to do Ahead of Their Time too, which is one of my favorite topics, actually, because there's a lot of wrestlers you can look back and go, man, if they would have just came along 5-10 years later, they would have fit in perfect, but they were sort of ahead of their time. So the first one that we did kind of some of the obvious ones. We did Waylon Mercy, the character, because you can do characters, you don't have to be wrestler, because obviously Dan Spivey wrestled as just Dan Spivey for a long time, and I think a lot of stuff he did in Japan was ahead of his time too, but the character Waylon Mercy was way ahead of its time, so ahead of its time that even when Bray Wyatt did a similar character, I think that was still kind of ahead of its time, because I don't think really people fully realized it. So we had that one. We had Goldust, who was really ahead of his time. People were not ready for it, and then when everybody was ready for it in the Attitude Era, people were like, "That's tame." Like, it's really weird what happened with Goldust. But he's a legend, you know what I mean? Goldust is a legendary character, but he was way ahead of his time when he first came out. People did not know what to do. Bad News Brown, we talked about being ahead of his time, and obviously Superstar Billy Graham was way ahead of his time. Ventura, Hogan, Scott Steiner, all of their
stuff
copied
after
him.
Superstar.
Triple Main Man.
So, yeah, it could be an entire wrestler's body of work, or it could be a particular character that they played. But I want to freeform this one. No notes here, no cheating here. We'll go around the room and let's see. I'll start. I might piss you guys off because someone had to have chosen this. We've talked about this guy before, and not on the ahead of his time, but we did a trendsetter on him.
Don't.
I think I know who it is. I think I picked it too. Don't do it. Who is it?
I don't want to do it now. The loose cannon gimmick.
Oh, whew.
Oh, okay.
That's a good one.
Brian Pillman's loose cannon gimmick was so ahead of his time.
It's on the list. It's on the list. It wasn't who I chose, but I thought about that one. Yes, that's a great one.
It was, I mean, the Attitude Era was right around the corner, and Brian Pillman was just on to something. The stuff he did, the way he tricked Eric Bischoff into letting him go and releasing him, and then he ended up on ECW television, which if you haven't seen his ECW debut, that shit is, you even as a fan that wrestling's, predetermined and all this stuff, and even in ECW land, you were uncomfortable when Brian Pillman was in there. It was crazy. You're in this renegade promotion that the crazy stuff happens all the time, but when I saw Brian Pillman, like, you didn't know, because people were blown, like, no, he was working for WCW. No, this is not possible. And then, like, when he comes there, he's just like saying WWF's name or whatever. Then he gets hired by WWF and kind of like, unfortunately, he got to that accident in the Humvee where he shattered his ankle. And so Vince didn't really get to flush that out. So when he finally did start doing the loose cannon stuff in WWF, he got teamed up with Austin, which was really cool. The controversial gun segment. There's so many different things. Austin flushed his head down the toilet, like in one of the segments or whatever. Like, there was just like really, and then they put him with like the Goldust and Marlena thing, where if he lost to Goldust, he wore a dress and all that stuff. Like, that was a little silly towards the end, unfortunately. But the loose cannon gimmick that he came up with in WCW, and he somehow convinced Eric Bischoff, you should really release me, because then all the dirt sheets will report that I'm released. And he fucking released him, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to ECW, and then I'm gonna go to WWF. Like, it's just so amazing, like the way it just all kind of happened. His gimmick from end of WCW, that famous scene where I don't know if it was a Nitro or pay-per-view, where he gets on the outside of the ring and he's fucking with the announcers because he was either getting attacked by somebody or running from someone, or came down with the Horsemen, because he was part of the Horsemen when he was a loose cannon. And he grabbed Bobby Heenan, who just had neck surgery. And Bobby Heenan's like, get the fuck off me, or something like that. They bleeped him out, and he's like, I have lawyers or whatever, because he's like, I just didn't want anybody touching me. I had neck surgery, and I didn't know that he was going to come on the outside. And he grabbed Bobby Heenan by the shoulders, like, and scared the shit out of him. Like, and Bobby Heenan's like, get the fuck, don't you fucking touch me, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
tumbles on the outside, almost in our lap here, and Eddie. Wait a minute. Wait. Easy.
No.
Easy.
What the f are you doing?
Easy. We're crying out loud. We've got problems here.
Yeah, Pillman is
yeah,
just,
so I say Brian Pillman as a whole, but the loose cannon gimmick is my offering. It was way ahead of its time. I don't think anybody appreciates it. Now you look back, you're like, well, of course. Like, yes, you
It
should
was
do
loose
that.
cannon.
Like,
What was the story about how he tried to like introduce himself to Vince? You remember that? Like,
oh yes,
he like
I do
bugged
remember
JR
something.
or something, and he like it was something that there was somewhere in like some event or something. And he like
No,
made
it was
his
a
way to-
press con. It was the press conference to announce
yeah.
that they signed him. So they did this weird press conference to try to make him
Who
a
is
big
that?
deal or whatever. And yeah, he was all off the wall, and Vince didn't even know what he was doing and all that stuff. And like Vince was just like, "Dude, this guy, what do we do?
Fucking
Like,
yeah.
right.
Why did you tell me to hire this guy, Jr.?" Like, and he's just like, "It's okay, Vince."
He's a character. He's obviously a character.
It'll be fine.
Cincinnati Bengal. I forget what. Did he
Calm
play
down,
college
Vince.
ball?
It's fine. He's just a character. It's all fake. I had to tell Vince like this is all make believe. It's all predetermined. He's like, all right. I didn't know.
It's a work. Vance is a work. We're just working.
Okay.
We are
okay.
working.
Thank you.
I think I have one. Think of a guy who could have been Brock Lesnar if he was around 10 years later with his ability and his size.
You have the guy on my list. I think I know who you're going to say.
I think well, I'll give you the other hint. Big on ECW as well.
God damn it, Dave.
No,
You already know who it is.
I don't know this, so you got cousins, but not mine. I thought you.
It's totally Mike Awesome, isn't it? Cuz is it Mike Awesome? Yeah, it's Mike Awesome.
Oh, good.
It's Mike Awesome. Yeah,
That's who I thought Jess was gonna say too.
I thought he was too. I thought he was going to say Mike
I
Awesome.
considered him on my list. I didn't end up putting him on there, but I did like think about him, and
I
I was like,
But think about this guy, and I'm sorry, cuz
He's ahead of his time.
please jump in. You'll have way more details than I ever will, so please jump in.
no, cousin
This
Piss.
guy's 6'6", 292 pounds, able to moonsault, able to do super crazy moves off top ropes, off top of cages, stuff that no one thought anybody that size should ever be doing, and Brock Lesnar was doing it in like 2002. This guy came around in the early 90s, started doing all this shit, and people saw it. We saw it. We saw all the amazing impact and what he was able to do. Unfortunately, retired in 2006, but look at that window. Think about that window. Where was Brock in 2006? Like, it's wild. And they're I don't want to say they're the same guy, but they have a lot of the same qualities of huge size, major athletic ability.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mike Awesome wasn't great on the mic either. Guess what? Neither was Brock, but Brock had a lot of help. Just imagine if he was in a different place and pushed about 5 years into the future, what Mike Awesome could have been with all that talent, all that ability, that size, being in the right place, because he came over from smaller federations over in Japan, did some great things and has actually held records of some of the longest reigning champions for some of those divisions there, but it never really made it to the main stage. He was in WWF for like 1 year and then a one-night spot for ECW's one night stand, where he technically was part of WWE for like 1 day. And then he retired in 2006, and unfortunately he killed himself a few years later at the age of like 42.
Yeah, he was young.
Hang on. Holy. That is Mike Awesome. He's the heavyweight champion of ECW. The last time we saw him, he had that belt. And what's he doing here? Doesn't he have some kind of title defense? He's got a lot of nerve just walking on this program. Mike Awesome, the ECW World Heavyweight Champion, just wiped out Kevin Nash. What next?
And I
And
was
then
just like,
he had that 70s guy gimmick in WCW. Had a pretty good run, but
Yeah,
That too.
I
Oh,
can't,
yeah,
I can't
100%,
say his
you're
other
right.
one. Well, I'll bleep it out. It was the Fat Chick Thriller.
yeah,
Was another nickname that he had in WCW.
That's right.
Fatty fat.
I forgot about that.
But no, also, that's
He's great.
What a great offering. But I think it was the industry because it was either Kevin
They weren't
Nash
ready
or the
for him, right?
Undertaker. I might have been Kevin Nash that said something. He did a sunset flip. He did it. Like someone didn't sunset flip him. He did as a 7-footer. And I think when he went to the back, Undertaker was like, What are you doing? And he's like, what? He's like, I want to show people I'm athletic. And he's like, you're a big man. Don't do that. And like, which is crazy because Undertaker later would be like, I want to work.
Fucking
You know,
high fly.
but I might be messing that story up. But like, so that was the industry. So a big guy like
Right.
Mike Awesome, unless you're going to ECW, which let's face it, we think back fondly on ECW as we should because there's so many bright spots and stars.
There is.
But like if you're looking at a whole pie, you can divide half of it for WW or 48% for WWF and then 48% for WCW. I'm being generous when ECW had 2% of the pie, but the impact that they had was great later. So when Mike Awesome went there, everybody was like, fuck, who cares? Big 6'6" guy doing that. You're wasting all your shit. Nowadays, you have Lesnar doing amazing things. You have, Keith Lee, we were talking about. You have Samoa Joe, even all these big guys doing major athletic stuff. But yeah, Mike Awesome was around at the time. I think when the industry was like, you don't do that as a big guy.
Who's the
Especially
Japanese
WWF.
wrestler he had battles with in ECW that just killed each other?
Masato Tanaka.
My God,
So ridiculous.
But
I love their matches.
He loved when he would always go to Japan. He would always watch tapes on Bestia 666, and that's what inspired him to be like take.
Is that a federation
style.
or a wrestler?
No, a wrestler.
Legit question. Okay.
Luchador. Yeah, so he was inspired by the Lucha Libre, basically, like that. He wanted to be high flying like that too. So he was a fan of that guy, and yeah, right.
I'll let cousin
go ahead.
think of another one. And it's a segue because we just heard his name too, and it's very similar to Mike Awesome in his style. But Bam Bam Bigelow is a guy for me.
That's a good one. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's like, you want to talk about a perfect package.
Like
of a
we have a
guy.
hidden camera in your room right behind you because we can see your lips.
I don't have it written
Don't
down, I
write
just have
anything
it in my
down,
head.
cuz. Don't write anything down.
He's all, damn it.
But like from a tattooed head, former bodyguard, but like he could move like anybody. He can move like a luchador, like the cartwheels. He grew up, unfortunately, he grew up in the realm of Hogan, so he was never going to be that guy, and he was always kind of on that Jake Roberts
held the title, right? I mean, really?
mid level.
Main event at a WrestleMania.
Yeah, he was
did.
trusted with Lawrence Taylor to get this guy, and he blew up.
Bam Bam was a really good hand, Craig, and a big dude. And I did his cartwheels on the WWF game all the time. It was the best. But he was doing cartwheels. And then he even amped his stuff up when he saw Vader doing moonsaults. He couldn't quite do them like Vader, but he got close. He went to the side a little bit. But he was doing some major moves in there. But like I said, in the WWF, I don't think he won any major title whatsoever. But
and
so
I
trusted to be in the main event all the time. Go ahead, Chris.
Go back and watch Survivor Series '87. I mean, his ovation was louder than Hogan's. Like whenever he would get in there, and like they loved him like in that promotion. And they ended up going with Randy Savage, and I think his attitude, his immaturity,
I think
at the
that
time
worked
is why.
out.
I don't think he passed the loyalty code with Vince. Like he was just kind of like,
and
pay
then when he
me.
came back in the mid '90s, he main evented with Lawrence Taylor. He was part of the $1 Million Corporation. They tried a face run with him. It just it failed. He didn't click with the click in the back of Catch My Drift.
He missed
he
missed the window. When he was way over, he was more concerned about the check, which I understand.
I know what Cuz is going to say because we all know where he went. And we're like, there he is. Like, he went to a certain promotion. Yeah, he went to ECW, and him and Taz. Oh my God, dude!
Yeah.
Like him and RVD. Oh my God! Like those two. Like he just fit in.
But
the team.
don't forget, he has some sense to Japan, and all great wrestlers.
Oh yeah, all the great wrestlers, and he tagged team with Vader in Japan, and like they were awesome. Like Bam Bam Bigelow was way ahead of his time, man.
He could have been like if they just would have.
I feel like I've said this many times, but that the next night after I beat Bam Bam, I was wrestling Mikey Whipwreck at the Queen's Elks Lodge, and I had this idea because I was always trying to outdo myself. I want to crotch Mikey on the guardrail, but come cross the whole walkway, the entranceway, and springboard off the other guardrail and clear the whole entranceway and kick him. When he, what do you think, Paul? You think that'd be? He goes, it doesn't matter what you do. These people are gonna love you. And I really, I was like, whatever, weirdo. I had no idea what he was getting at, but total different energy immediately from the crowd, and it never went back. So they definitely held me in a higher esteem instantly after that Bam Bam Bigelow match, no question about it. And the whole vibration of my relationship with the crowd was just like boom on a much higher level. So that was great. I loved it. I loved wrestling Bam Bam.
I think I think we had an episode. We either did a Trendsetters or we talked about him. But if he was better politicking backstage,
I believe it was Trendsetter. We did.
He didn't care. To your point, he just didn't care. He's like, if I'm getting paid, I'm good. You put me in the main event, I don't have to win the title. It's fine. I don't need that. Just
he was the Eddie Kingston of the '80s.
Partner.
Right, because who's your guy? Since we
stole two of yours,
I'm just gonna go Stardust. Since Goldust, Stardust. No, I'm just kidding. Tough. I'm tough. There's two. I'm kind of tossing around. I guess I'll go with the Mankind, the character Mankind.
Dude,
fantastic.
on my list, 100%.
He's just that kind of character you never seen before.
That kind of character, but also the kind of character that, I mean, he wasn't the best worker because of his, I don't want to say his lack of abilities, but you can tell like he's pretty messed up. He's beat up because he beats himself up.
I would challenge that statement because I know what you mean. I think he wasn't a good wrestler because of his physical set, but he was a great worker.
Yes,
he had psychology.
100%.
He had psychology and he knew what he wanted to do.
Yeah. If I said worker, I apologize because he's one of the best workers in the business. Is the technical wrestling wasn't really his forte, right?
Yeah.
But he knew where the spots were. He knew how to tell a story, and woo, man, just amazing. So much so because you got to talk about that WCW spot where everybody changes the channel. I mean, that's pretty. I love that.
When he beats, and that's the thing. That's when he's at that point. He's Mr. Sacco Mankind.
He's the he's the character. He's the character.
It's just an infusion. Yeah, it's a hybrid.
But the original, and he was one of the only wrestlers to have exit music too.
Yes.
He had his intro music, and then when he would beat somebody, it would be that somber piano playing or whatever. He'd rock back and forth. Like, in a weird way, it was almost like what Cactus should have been, because there was no direction for Cactus, because it was he was in and out of WCW. He was on indies in Japan as Cactus. But when he went to WWF, Vince, of course, wants to own the name.
I think that's where the ahead of its time comes in, is the Cactus portion of it is where it comes into, like, that's where it's really ahead of its time.
And then that early Mankind, Cuz is right. Like, they had to liven him up, I guess, for him to thrive in that company. But it was a very, amazingly dark. His match against Shawn Michaels at Mind Games, was amazing. And, his feud, he was one of the only guys that the Undertaker's let him beat me, basically. And he came in there, got the best of the Undertaker's character, when he first came in there. And not a lot of people got a chance to beat the Undertaker, on pay-per-views. So I'll start round 2 here because I don't want this.
There's 2 rounds. Oh man!
When David said it's kind of like Brock Lesnar, I thought he was going to go this way. But my second offering is Ken Shamrock.
That's what I thought he was going to.
Yeah. He was way ahead of his time. I mean, so much in fact that I think that he fizzed out because he didn't mesh in the Attitude Era once the Attitude Era got rolling, and but his first character was this real, like Lesnar is now, this real scary, he could beat your ass, you better be careful because he's a real fighter. And it was just, he brought that aura when he beat Vader up in that match and all that stuff. They were really onto something. And even just the odd choice of having him as the special guest referee and Austin and Brett, he fit perfect. And it was weird. And then after that, Yeah, the kind of, and I thought his feud with The Rock is so underrated, and nobody talks
is.
about how good it was. He had a world title match with Shawn Michaels at In Your House Generation X at the end of '97. Like, so he was, to me, like he was the original Lesnar in the sense he just wasn't as big as Lesnar, but like and he even punched himself in the face when he got up on the stairs. And
Yeah.
I always thought he was way ahead of his time. And then when the Attitude Era started, that was really over the top with characters, like, and I don't think Shamrock had any charisma. And I think that like that gimmick just died quickly, and I think that's why he didn't really like last. I mean, he's part of the corporate ministry, I think, for a while and stuff like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't like his character got put in the background. But for like that brief time when he debuted against Vader in '97, he was like that. When he snapped against the Bulldog at SummerSlam '97 and he beat the shit out of the refs, nobody ever seen like somebody just belly to belly referee.
Yeah.
And poor Pat Patterson. He's like, oh my goodness, like getting belly to belly like over.
Has been embarrassed to the extent that he's resorted finally. And the officials here. The officials trying to calm Shamrock down. Good look, he's a nut.
The first MMA guy to like
big strong boy
to do it, to make that transition, and to be such a natural of like the MMA. Like he took it to like a duck in water. Like Shamrock,
he was a pro wrestler
amazing.
before. That's the thing, is he trained in pro wrestling before he fought, and nobody knew that. And so when he went there, and they're like, "You're pretty good," he's like, well, "I mean, that's how I kind of started, like rolling around." So yeah, that's my second offering for round 2 is Ken Shamrock. I think he's grossly ahead of his time.
Craig, did you want to go next? You want me to go, buddy?
I'll go. It's a bit of a weird one. Not so much as ahead of their time, just like psychology wise, like because there's so many gimmick wrestlers out there, like cartoonish kind of stuff, but ahead of its time, and then that it was a bit of a long build. But like Doink the Clown. So
I almost went with that too as one of my choices.
As a character, right? Not necessarily any one of the
in ring. I mean, a leg drop from the top rope.
So good.
Holy shit! I mean, Bobby Eaton, but like that leg drop that Doink did, and Doink, Matt Bourne could go.
He was he was amazing.
The entire kind of transition of like a kid's cartoon character, but with a sinister kind of like. And it was a slow build. Like the
back to the Simpsons.
The way,
reminds me of Krusty. Like he's Krusty.
The way his face would
what
turn.
Made it so ahead of its time was it was a like kind of a backlash at the people that called WWF a circus.
Yes,
because like Vince took it national and he did bubblegum over the top characters and all that.
You want to call us
like,
a circus? Watch this, pal.
And so Doink was like a slap in their face, like, "Oh, you want a clown? You think that I have a bunch of clowns here, like in a big top? Like, then I'll make an evil clown." And it was ahead of his time. That is probably. The evil Doink is probably one of my most favorite, like
when
WWF
he turns
ever.
and his facial expressions when he goes from happy clown to like evil clown, and when he like in the beginning it was throwing the bucket of confetti and then like water, and then it just like he got darker and darker.
But then when he turned on Crush and he beat Crush with the cast, and he had like batteries were flying out of it, and like he just snapped and like it was like, oh man, this clown's evil.
Yeah,
WrestleMania 9, I know it's not everybody's favorite WrestleMania, but after he beat Crush, when he looked, because he had the double doink or whatever, I will never forget him going, "What happened?
Yeah. What happened?
Like,
oh my God, we used to quote that.
Remember what Doink said about double vision? There's a battery laying in the ring.
It was inside that prosthesis or whatever it is.
What a great illusion.
An illusion? What are you talking about?
That's not an illusion. I'm in a state of shock right now. There are 2 Doinks. David Copperfield is responsible for this. He taught Doink that illusion. I believe it. That's not magic. That's cheating.
Exactly right.
It's magic.
It's cheating.
Yeah, what happened?
I mean, there's plenty of years after that. Doink went downhill fast, and multiple Doinks and Dink and then other people in the characters in the indies, but the original conception of Doink in those first couple of years, like or
Doink,
whatever
man.
it was,
Man, was
Matt Bourne.
Scary
it
stuff.
was a beautiful ahead of its time gimmick, and as far as psychology and
that's probably one of the
play.
better offerings. I want to say like that. Doink was really ahead of his time for sure. That character.
Yep. Agreed.
All right.
Good job, Greg.
I'm gonna. I don't like talking about this one sometimes because I get depressed.
Benoit.
No,
Oh.
no.
I thought I did that silently, by the way.
But you're close.
And wow.
It's Owen.
Ah.
It's always Owen, man. I mean, come on. I
love
mean,
him.
when you think about, there's so much about the persona that is Owen Hart that the gimmicks, the multiple gimmicks, the ability of in-ring work, the technical ability. I would argue he might have been better than Brett from time to time because Brett didn't put any aerial arsenal into his stuff at all. Like it was very much Brett stayed to the second rope if you were lucky that you would see that, and it was if anything it was just an elbow back down from the second rope. Owen went high flying when high flying was a naughty thing. Working with high energy and Coco Beware, revitalizing Coco's career. Bringing in titles where they probably shouldn't have existed because of how charismatic he was, and also a person that could bring a locker room together, which is very rare. He would have, and if he was,
I think that's what makes him ahead of his time. Was like just right around the corner was the big promotion that he wanted to be a part of. Like that he would be like, oh my, like just all these people. Like he kind of had to play the game, in the '90s and stuff like that. I mean, he's lucky he had Brett to feud with, but. Like, and he was around Davey Boy and Anvil and all that stuff. But I mean, like, it was probably like he was probably limited. And then when the Attitude Era was about Schmut and, all that stuff and Choppy PP, and he was uncomfortable. And then, like, right 2002 and 3 and 4, he would have been like, oh my God, like, I have a Jericho, I have a Angle, I have a Guerrero, I have, like, oh my goodness, like it's just oh my goodness, like Pat Patterson.
Yeah.
Oh my,
it would have been great for sure. And he'd be a coach in NXT probably.
He would have just broken through with that, like, and if he would have tapped into like Ultimate Evil of Owen and just something where he the only downside of Owen was he wasn't great on the mic and he always kind of had a blank kind of face, but you'd feel that with some more experience he would have pushed through that. Like he actually had the ability to, like, I mean, when he got his shot,
I think when Brett left, that was going to be, he was either going to make or break it, because you can't tell me that he wouldn't have feuded with Austin again, like after Austin won the world title, because it was already made storyline.
Oh man!
So like he would have done it later that year in '98. So like he and he didn't, and they didn't use him. But like in '99, you can't tell me that they were going to be like, we have Owen in our back pocket. He could feud with Austin at any time, or feud with The Rock or whatever. Like, and it just didn't happen.
The way he would have grown, he was already, top of his game, but the way he could have grown, he would have grown to like just that apex level of you could work with anyone, the psychology, and take anyone with him, and his character would have changed. Like, who knows? But ahead of his time, like when he got his shot, my God, like the Brett and Owen entire feud and everything he did was fantastic.
WrestleMania 10, man, match. He stole the match.
One of the goats.
Yeah.
Well, we'll end it there. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, piece of shit.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Should never let me finish it up. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, he sure did. Give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or
with love
on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. I love you too, man. For the uncles and the British Bulldogs and the brothers and the glorious. This is Dave with the O.W.P signing off. Have a good one.